What is up? Welcome to Making the Grade, where we look at the Arizona Cardinals PFF grades and talk about what's going on in those grades, look at what stories the data are telling us. And I tell you what, we've had some better stories to tell of late. The Cardinals are on a roll. They're 6-4. They're atop the NFC West still, and looking strong. And it's been really encouraging and for some fans, maybe even unexpected. That I think they've overperformed maybe even what I might have thought in terms of just the growth, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But it's really nice to see that. So we're gonna talk about that. And we got some folks already in the chat. We got Grandizer here doing what Grandizer does so well, supporting the chat. Putting all the information up there. Thank you for all that you do, Grandizer. Thanks for being here. We got Calvin. Give everyone an A+. I'm telling you, it was a really nice game, all three facets. So for sure. Saltius, let's go Cardinals. It's been a while since we've been able to very enthusiastically say that, right? Jonathan, how's it hanging, fellas? Thanks for being here, hanging out with us. So listen, it's a lot more fun to do these when the Cardinals are winning, and they've been on a roll, and they're playing well. So there's some things to be excited about. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Talk about, the game. The Cardinals won 31-6. Kyler Murray had a really solid game. He was super efficient. 266 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 2 rushing touchdowns. His QBR was 95.9, the ESPN's QBR. Then his traditional quarterback rating, the old school quarterback rating, was 126.7. Just a nice game, the balanced game. They had 147 yards rushing. They kind of divided up. Trey Benson had a really nice game, got a lot of carries. James Conner was more effective in the passing game than the rushing game, but so overall the team was really good. Receiving, Trey McBride had a great game, some big plays. Marvin Harrison, nice touchdown, just all around. And on the defensive side, they were solid. There were 3 sacks, right, which was really nice. Lucada, Xavier Thomas, and Budda Baker had a sack, and we saw some nice pressures from the newly acquired edge rusher that they picked up, Browning, right? So just some nice things. So overall in terms of this game. So let's get into the offensive side of the ball, right? Real quick, let me get a couple of comments. What's up? I honestly hate to go into bye week, this much momentum, right? But it'd be nice and get some rest, right? Ryan Campbell, please make more videos. You're great to watch, and your opinions and views are amazing, man. I really appreciate that. I kind of have to try to find kind of a balance that's sustainable because of everything else going on in the world. I'm wanting to get a few more going, but I did one this last week on the trade. So I appreciate that, Ryan. Thank you very much. Classy Nasty Sup, Professor. Appreciate you being here as always. So on the offensive side, Amari DeMarcado kind of led this charge. Trey McBride had a good grade. Froholt, Murray, some solid grades across the board. Let's do like I always like to do, and that is look at the at the offensive line first. So we'll sort it by pass blocking snaps. And overall, the offensive line had a solid game. Paris Johnson Jr., yet another game. Picture of consistency. I've talked about this all the time, but you look at week in and week out, right? Like his worst game was a 58.7, right? And like he's just constantly got those orangish yellows, right? And so like just really consistent and also balanced in the running and passing blocking. Like he's good and he's solid in both most weeks. So he just continues to show that he was a great addition, great pick. So Paris Johnson Jr. nice game. Froholt had a nice game, especially in the run blocking. He had some really nice run blocks that people highlighted and talked about. His pass blocking grade wasn't great, but Tristan Cullen has really filled in nicely. He was a guy we picked up last year. He was a nice depth piece, and he's filled in nicely since the injury to Will Hernandez. Like you look at his grades, he's had a few rough games here and there, but overall he's been really good, right? So like this is just some solid depth that Monty has built on this roster. Evan Brown had a decent game, better in the pass blocking, but still overall, pretty solid. Beecham, was the lowest grade, but if that's your lowest grade, you'll take that. So again, the offensive line, played a solid game there, right? Then we'll look at that. We'll sort it by positions to get back to tight end. McBride, what can we say, right? He's become a star. A lot of people are talking about him. Is he the second best tight end behind, Kittle, right? And I think he's in that conversation, right? Solid game. You saw, like, was it 3 games in a row where he's hurdled someone? I mean, it's unreal, like, what he's doing. So just such a great game from him. Ryman, had a solid game in pass blocking. He's rookie. To be on the field as a tight end is a plus, right? So, he did his job. Higgins had a nice game, right? Really solid grade there. So got good play out of the tight ends. The receivers, Dortch's grade wasn't all that great, but it's fine. He on 15 snaps. Michael Wilson had a solid grade on, 39 snaps. Zay Jones, nothing to speak about there. Marvin Harrison Jr. graded really well, had that really nice, touchdown catch, right, with a great throw from Kyler. So solid game from him. Zach Pascal on 7 snaps, nothing to, write home about there. But, Harrison graded really well, so, Michael Wilson, it was more of a tight end and running game kind of a thing, but there were a couple of nice plays there from the receivers. Then we get to the halfbacks, right? Trey Benson had his best game grade-wise, I think, as a pro. We've talked about him in the past year. That was his best grade. Had a solid game, not like 60 yards. We've talked about this in the past. His ball carrier vision has kind of been a concern, and it's nice to see him playing well and developing because he's a guy you're probably looking at, being a big part of this moving forward, right, in years to come. When you draft a guy in the 3rd round. Democrato had a nice game again, right? DJ Dallas graded well on limited snaps, only 4 snaps. James Conner graded well, even though the yardage wasn't great, he still graded well. His passing grade, 84.5, was the better. He had, that screen pass that he took down just barely outside of the goal line. So really nice there. We had a John Gaines sighting, unlimited number of snaps. Mentioned, I didn't, he only had 7 snaps, so he graded well. Charlie Heck, not so well, but only 10 snaps. So running backs, solid grades there. And then Kyler Murray graded really nicely, 80.3, had a solid game. But this is really a point for an interesting conversation because someone in the Discord, Red Sea, Corey, asked, what his grade is 80.3, which is good, but like it's not as good as the grade he had in that Rams game, right? And his passing grade of 76.3 is solid, but it's not it. What more did he need to do to have a grade, like you look this 96.9, because his game was solid, right? And I looked at it and I think this is a great point to kind of talk about, get a little bit into the nuance of what PFF grades are about. And I've been a defender of them, and a lot of people, are very critical of them. And I think people who are critical of them don't understand data, and data is never perfect. It always has its limitations. It's a piece of the story, and you have to put it into context. And that's what we try to do here. And data points don't show you everything, right? They typically just show you one piece of it. And PFF is like that. There's some things it does a good job of showing you, and some things that are just it's not going to pick up. And that doesn't make it flawed. It just means every piece of data has limitation. Like, I work with data for a living, right? I'm a professor. I publish research in peer-reviewed journals. When you work with data, you understand that the best data has limitations. You read a peer-reviewed article about any kind of research, and they'll talk about the limitations of those data. So let me use this as a point, though, to talk about Kyler's grade and what PFF does well and what it doesn't include. PFF, graded him at 76.3 for passing grade, right? One of the things about PFF is their stuff, they have this kind of range from -2 to +2. Any given play, someone does something. Are we going to get up with Joseph Ruffle? Oh, what's up with this PFF score? You played so well. Yeah. We're totally getting that. And Salty, I'll get to your question when we get to the defense. I definitely see that. So they watch, like they look at a play and they say, okay, when you look at what the player did, how do we grade that play? Is it a plus 1.5, a +1, a -1, a -2, based on how good or bad what the player did in that play was? Okay. And they take into account degree of difficulty. Okay. So like when Kyler threw that screen pass, right, to James Conner, right? And James Conner took it down to near the goal line, and the offensive line did some really great blocking. Kyler got graded positively for that, but he didn't get the same kind of positive grade he gets if he throws a pass 20 yards down the field into a tight window in the perfect spot, right? They're both positive, but one of those is like a plus 1.5 or a plus 2, and the other might be a plus 0.5 or a plus 1. So what you have to understand is that the PFF grades take into account degree of difficulty, okay? So shorter passes, that to a wide open receiver on time are positive, but they're not going to get someone the same kind of grade as an oh my goodness big time throw. And if you look at this game against the Rams, he had 6 big time throws, right? That's why he had a 96.9. This game he had 1 big time throw. That doesn't mean he didn't have many good throws, but big time throws are those throws that are just high degree of difficulty, right? He also had 1 turnover worthy play. I think it was the fumble when he got nailed, right? And that he recovered. But here's the point I'm making. Like if you look at deeper, and the average depth of target was 4.9 yards, okay? 4.9 yards average depth of target. That was the lowest he's had all season. You see this? Like the next lowest was 5.9. It was a full yard lower. This is not a knock on Kyler. This just means that Kyler was throwing quicker, shorter passes, screen passes. The offense, that was the game plan, right? And it was working really well. He just wasn't taking as many deep shots as he does other games. And his time to throw was 2.27 seconds, right? That was maybe the quickest of the season for him, okay? So here's the point. What PFF grading saw was Kyler Murray making quick throws, not as many deep throws, not as many high degree of difficulty tight window throws. There were a few, but not as many, right? And more quick, efficient throws. Now, that's not a knock. Kyler Murray made the right decision. It was a solid offensive game plan. He made good throws. He made the right read. He was playing smart. And the point is, one of the things PFF does not include is it does not, like the grade isn't based on like it doesn't take into account like the decision making in terms of first read, second read, doesn't take into account like Kyler's grade didn't get a boost for him playing a smart game. The grade was based on the plays that were done. So what I'm saying is like PFF does a good job of giving you an idea of what the player did with the play, but some of the things it doesn't include is some of the mental side of things, making the right read, playing within the system, playing within the scheme, adjustments, those things, it doesn't capture that. And it doesn't make it a bad data point. It's just, those are the things that's the context we have to give this, right? When you understand the context, you look at his grade of, for this game, 80.3 and say, well, that's a good grade. And you just understand the context of, the game plan was more run heavy, short passes. And so his grade is a little bit lower because of that. And that's fine. Right. So this is just this is my little kind of longer discussion about PFF, but I think that's just a thing we have to understand about these grades, right? So solid game, really good game. Not, he was making efficient, quick passes. That was the game plan. So the grade wasn't as high because he wasn't having to make as many high degree of difficulty throws. Rambo, thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Hey, Joe, good to see you. Good to see you as well. All right, so let's get onto the defense and let's bring back Salty's question. Is Jalen Thompson expendable? Because Dadrian Taylor Jefferson had a nice game. His grade was 61.2, so it was solid. It wasn't, it was slightly above average, but for a rookie, to be playing against Aaron Rodgers, who knew he was a rookie and was, you would think would try to pick on him. He had. He's had a better grade in smaller sample size against San Francisco, and 22 snaps, had a really great game. 10 snaps against Chicago, had a solid game. But this is 58 is the most snaps he's played all season, and he held his own, right? Was really good in tackling and run defense. The coverage was maybe where it was a little bit not, where it was a little bit less of a grade. But so Jalen Thompson obviously missed the game. Is he expendable? So this is a great question because Buddha played well. There's been all the talk about is Buddha, last year his deal or what's going to happen. I don't know if I mean with safeties, do sometimes you don't pay them super late into their career or lots of money. So the question is how much. So Buddha and Jalen both have good sized contracts, and they drafted Demerson, so Taylor Demerson, Rabbit. So I have to imagine they drafted Rabbit with the idea and the hope that he would be a starter for them in a couple years, and that one of those two guys, Buddha or Jalen, would end up moving on. So, is he expendable? I mean, I think, I don't think they're moving on from him, this year, obviously. And I'd have to see what his contract, in fact, let's see what his contract is. Jalen Thompson contract. All right. So we'll go to over the cap here. So he is signed through 2025 with a void year, right? And there's, you look at the dead cap, right? The cap number is high, guaranteed salary not so high. So but there's some dead cap money and then some savings, right? So you look at the dead cap after this year would be a lot. I think this last 2026 is a void year. So you look at it there's still $7 million in dead money if they were to move on from 2025, right? So I don't think he's expendable right now. I mean, I think though one of those two, Buddha or Jalen, is probably not going to be signed to an extension when their contract ends. Unfortunately, Buddha's contract ends sooner, and he's older. So I love Buddha and I hope they keep him, but it wouldn't shock me if they let him play out his contract and they don't, offer him a big contract. I hope he's still here, but I think Jalen is going to be, barring injury or something unexpected, I think he'll play out his contract at least. So I don't think he's, but I am paying attention to the Rabbit thing in terms of what does that mean for the future. So it's a good question. Am I sick? Do you have this? Yeah, I got a little sinus nonsense. Thanks for noticing. So yeah, I get those sinus infections here and there. So hopefully I'll get past it. But Jackie, what is up? Thanks for being here. Had the pleasure of being there. Nice to see Rabbit step up. Definitely nice to see him play well for sure. So let's get into the defensive grades. We've got let's maybe do it by coverage snaps to get kind of some of these guys up here. We'll start with the safeties. Rabbit, again, we talked 61.2, solid game for him. Buddha had his best graded game of the year, right? This was his highest grade of the season, 89.5. And, he was all over the place. I mean, he was doing what Buddha does, right? Making some huge plays. Garrett Williams, solid game. He continues to be a solid player for the Cardinals as a slot corner, right? I mean, he hasn't had, his worst game was Detroit, 44.0, but hasn't had really, aside from that, a bad game, right? He's just been consistent and solid, 72.6 overall grade. So such a great draft pick there, Garrett Williams. Melton, decent grade, 64.9. He's been up and down as a rookie, he's had some good games and some bad games, but it was nice to see him, have a decent game there. On 36 snaps. So it's also nice to see that, with Murphy Bunting back, which I know, people are kind of down on Murphy Bunting. Max Melton, to see him still playing is nice, right? That he didn't go completely to the bench. Starling Thomas had such a really nice game, right? 75.4. We've talked about him before. He has his ups and downs, but he just doesn't seem to make a lot of the big mistakes, right? And he's overall 60.1 for the year. Solid. If nothing else, he'll be a solid depth piece moving forward. But he had a really nice game for them. Murphy Bunting didn't play terribly bad. He's I know he's been kind of a whipping boy with the season he's had for them. But a decent grade. It's again overall he's not played particularly well this year, but wasn't bad. Come back from that injury, played decent. Let's see if there's any other defensive backs down here. No. Okay. So that's all the defensive backs. decent game. Do you think really? I think solid games. No one had a terrible game in terms of the secondary, which is nice, right? When you hold Aaron Rodgers to 6 points, so that's kind of probably part of that story. Kaiser White had a decent game, 66.1. We've talked about him. He started out really rough, right, this season, but he's been playing better of late, which is really nice to see, right? Hopefully this is just a matter of him being healthy, right? Finally. So hopefully he continues on that trajectory. Mac Wilson didn't have a great game, 48.6. He was really rough in the run defense side of things. That's really where his grade was brought down. Owen Pappo on 7 snaps. They seem to get him in there just 5 to 10 snaps a game, right? It seems like he's not playing a lot, right? But here and there. Last week he did. He's former 5th round pick. So maybe like to see him develop and maybe get on the field a little bit more, but not too bad. Chris Barnes, 6 snaps, 66.3, decent. So that's the inside linebackers. Let's see. We got a question here, a comment. It was interesting to see how we were able to limit the production of Devontae and Garrett Wilson. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those two. And now, they did have a couple drops themselves that were self-inflicted, but there was also some nice plays by our defensive players, our defensive back secondary to really bracket them. So, yeah, I mean, those are 2 really good receivers. So that the degree of difficulty there for our defensive backs was also kind of, high there. So that's a really good point. Going to the edge rushers, right? Luketa had a sack, right, which was nice to see. Solid grade, 64.7, right, on 24 snaps. Baron Browning, he had a couple pressures. The guy that they traded for, making an impact. Some of those things made a difference. Contributed to some big plays. Had a grade of 66.3, so nice to see him. Or 66.4. Nice to see him, making immediate contributions, right? Then we have Xavier Thomas. He's struggling overall in terms of his grade. He did manage to get a sack, which was nice, but that was the only pressure he had. But his coverage grade is really kind of what brought it down only on 3 snaps. But his pass rush grade 59.2 was not, just meh, right? But he's a rookie. You want to, the fact that he's on the field is nice to see. Hopefully he'll continue to develop. Zaven didn't have his best game. He was okay in tackling, but this was a low grade for him. He's, I think he's kind of last couple games they've been winning, so that's nice, but his grades have been a little lower last 3 games. So, like to see him kind of get back to, what we know he can do. Dimakaji, 60.7, very kind of, it's fine. He had a nice game last week. And then we go from the edge rushers to the defensive line. We got Dante Stills, right? Dante Stills, the man they call Dante. He had 3 pressures and 1 hit, but his grade was low. It was more the run defense side of things. If you look at that, like his pass rush grade was 62.4, but he struggled against the run, and that brought his grade down. Tonga, on 8 snaps, didn't grade particularly well. The defensive line really, they didn't grade as well, right? I mean, Naquan Jones had a really bad game. We talked about him a while back that he had a string of nice games, and unfortunately, he's kind of had a bad one here. Would like to see him get back towards having some of those better games. Roy Lopez, he had been struggling. So this isn't a bad game for him compared, if you look, he'd really kind of struggled. This was an improvement from his last 4 or 5 games. So like to see him kind of, get things going. LJ Collier, this is a very LJ Collier kind of game, he doesn't grade particularly well very often. So, across the defensive line, it was just okay, right? But the defense as a whole did a really good job, holding the Jets, right? Especially I think the secondary, right, really did a great job. And when you look at it, like the Jets playing from behind, they're going to have to pass, right? And the fact that the defensive backs played so well was really, really admirable. Ryan saying, how about number 85, Trey McBride, another hurdle, totally 3 totals in the last 3 games. I know you're currently talking about defense, but had to point that out. Yeah, and I think I mentioned that probably before you got here, the 3 games in a row, right? That he he hurdled somebody, right? I mean, it's becoming a weekly thing for McBride. He's just a beast, right? I mean, that is such, and I know back I talked about this a little bit with some folks, the Redbird Reboot podcast. I was on there, and we were talking about this. There's when they drafted him, Cardinals fans really wanted a center, right? To be drafted, and we needed a center, and I totally get that. So people were like a little down on the pick. Like they weren't totally, it was more that they wanted a different position. But when I did the video about that pick, one of the things I said is I have a feeling, Cardinals fans are going to really like him a couple of years from now, really be glad he's, part of this team. And it's turned out to be that, right? He is just so fun, so exciting, so good. He's the kind of guy you want on your team. So yeah, McBride's the man. Dana, thanks for being here. To be fair, they were facing Breece Hall and Braden Allen, so defense hurt them. Braylon Allen. That's a good point. I mean, that's a good running game. So that's probably part of why those grades were a little bit lower. But again, this Cardinals defense, I mean, is really, that was the question mark, right? And it's, if you look at it, just go to the Cardinals, they gave up in recent games, right? After the Packers game where we got blown out, right? They gave up 15 points. They gave up 27 to the Dolphins, but the 9 points, 6 points, it's like that's really a nice thing to see, right? If they, and I one of the things I tweeted about this, like when you're looking at a young defense with a lot of young players, like they've got so many players that are first and second year players, right? That are playing for them. It's every game that goes by, those players are getting a little more experience, right? They're getting closer to being veterans, right? And so like when you have so many young players, I think there's a better likelihood or chance for the defense to get better over the course of the season, right? Because you have guys that are like rookies who are at this point, at least they've got, 10 NFL games under their belt, right? When they got 11, 12, 13 NFL games under their belt, that makes a lot of difference. That's meaningful for a rookie, right? And then, guys who are in their second year, right? They've got a full year now, they're a year and a half in. So like this defense people talked about it being the liability because you look at the roster and there's not a lot of name recognition, not a lot of players you look at as blue chip players, like aside from Budda Baker on the defense. But I think there's some players on there that it's like they're going to be really good players and they're working their way toward guys like Garrett Williams who are becoming really good players. And that 3 years from now, people are going to talk about as one of a top 10 cornerback in the NFL, right? Potentially. And those guys, we just don't know who they are yet. We don't know that they're that guy yet, but they were drafted to be developed as that guy, right? So like when you've got guys like Starling Thomas who are playing reasonably well, Max Melton who's getting some experience, Garrett Williams who's playing well, right? You've got guys like Dante Stills who's getting more snaps. These young players, Rabbit, who are going to become really good players. Some of them are, as the season goes on, they're getting closer to that. So I'm not saying this defense is going to continue holding people to 3 and 6 points or whatever every week. That I think that's not realistic for any defense to expect. But I think when you look at it, this defense, I think it could be better than people thought. I think these players are just going to start to develop and gel. They'll have their bumpy games, but they're going to be probably somewhere between how they've been playing now and where they started out, and that'll be good enough if this offense can play well. Ant saying second most cap space next year too. I think some young talent is a great combination. Yeah. And, so they're going to extend some guys, maybe bring in some more veterans. I don't think they're going to go on a spending spree. I think they're going to want to use their money to, extend guys develop and extend guys in house, but they're going to keep feeding that pipeline of talent. So Absolutely. So then looking at, like I like to do towards the end here, looking at the overall roster, on the offensive side, that offensive line continues to look solid, right? You know, Paris Johnson Jr., 81.1, Evan Brown, 69.7, Frohl is 74.1, Cullen is 71.9, Beecham 62.7 is the quote unquote weak link, right? Um, we've talked about this before. Offensive line is a weak link position or group, right? Where you don't need to have studs. What you need is to make sure, what the most important thing is that you don't have a weak link, right? Someone who's so bad that the other team's taking advantage of that, right? And like Beecham is the closest thing to a weak link. And this is a veteran who started for a long time and has a 62.7 grade. Like, I'll take that as my weak link, right? That's like that is a solid bounce offensive line that's playing well, right? And that's a really important part of it, right? And we haven't had that here in Arizona for a long time. So that's really nice to see. McBride, stud, right? Kyler's grading out really well. Connor Harrison's grading well. Wilson's decent, right? Dortch's grade isn't great, but that's fine, right? And then we'll put it to the two tight end sets because they play that a lot, right? Then you've got Ryman on there, right? So that offense is looking solid, right? Now the defensive side, the grade, this has always been where the grades are lower, right? But I'll say, just at the eyeball test, you look at this, it just looks like these grades on the defensive side. It's still not a defense with like tons of high graded talent in terms of the PFF grades, but it just feels like it's getting a little more towards the yellow and green, a little less of the orange and red. There's still some weak links here, I guess, but like the defense, just eyeballing this, looking at it like we do every week, it just feels like these defensive grades, the floor's raising a little bit, right? And they've been playing better, so it stands to reason. So this team is trending in the right direction, and we've talked about it before. Like their schedule, they went through the toughest part of the schedule. They've got the Seahawks, who are kind of up and down, right? An important division game. The Vikings have been good, but they've struggled a little bit late. Then they've got the Seahawks again. Patriots are not a good team this year, right? Panthers are not a good team. We beat the Rams. Can we do it again, right? Then the 49ers, we beat them. Like, this team has 6 wins. Like you look at this, the Patriots and Panthers, you figure those are teams that we definitely should beat, right? And like, there's no reason they can't steal another couple of these games, right? Split with the Seahawks, right? Take the Patriots and Panthers, get another win with the Rams or 49ers, right? Like, 10 wins is absolutely like viable, and if not more. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Like if they keep beating teams like this, the Dolphins and Bears and Jets, like, you think that, well, they should be able to beat, they should have a fighting chance against the Vikings, right? So there's a lot to be excited about. We'll see. Maybe they regress a little bit, but this team is built the right way. It's built with young talent, built through the draft. And so, like, it's different than the past, right? Because, like, in the past, you had those aging veterans. You're like, when are they going to get injured, right? So there's some reason to be excited. And even if they don't, make a deep run this year, like, they're ahead of schedule, right? This team is building for the future. And, year 2 of the rebuild, playoffs, if you get to the playoffs in year 2 of the rebuild, you're ahead of schedule. And they're trending that way. So really excited about it. Ryan saying we need to get Michael Wilson more involved. I feel like he can be a major breakout receiver for Kyler Murray. It'd be nice to see that, right? They're such a run-heavy offense and playing so much with those 2 tight end sets. I wonder if any receiver is going to be have a big season with them, but it'd be nice to get him more involved, right? Calvin saying agreed. Wilson's a smart player, and it's starting to show more and more. Yeah. They're building a solid roster. They've got I like the way they've built the roster. I think they need to add some pieces, each offseason. They need to upgrade kind of the pass rush still on the defensive line, but I think they're doing a heck of a job with what they're building, and they're surprising a lot of people, right? So it's exciting. It's another win, and obviously we love talking about wins. So All right. Well, hey, I'm going to wrap up. You probably notice I'm a little under the weather. So I'm got through this. We got through the grades, but we're going to kind of get out of here and enjoy the bye week. The Cardinals have earned a much deserved rest. So I hope you all have a great night, have a great week. Be safe, and we'll be back in a couple weeks after they hopefully win after the bye week. So, all right. See y'all later, everyone. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. Peace.
Hey, yo, it's Joe Mo. He's the host of Mock Draft Monday on the Cardinals Show. So join the live, hit like and subscribe. Enjoy the podcast tonight. Enjoy the podcast tonight.